Beer bad. Buffy's depression over Parker leads to her becoming an alcoholic.
We open with Buffy fighting vampires in the cemetery to the Rush 2049 soundtrack, and for some reason Parker is there.
Buffy?
Stay down!
After she stakes all the vampires, Parker professes his love for Buffy and apologizes for his past behavior, while sappy music plays not just in the background, but in the foreground as well.
What does that mean?
It was a lot.
Then we cut to where Buffy actually is, which is in a class, where Parker's flirting with another girl.
And Professor Walsh is talking about how the brain always wants what it wants.
Hitting the message of the episode home with a baseball bat straight to the face.
We cut back to Buffy's dream, but this time Parker is also giving her flowers and ice cream.
Later, Buffy's working on schoolwork with Willow, and Xander approaches, talking about how he's now a bartender at a pub.
And he shows that he got the job using a fake ID. He tries to cheer Buffy up by being annoying, which naturally only makes things worse.
And she can't stand other people talking about themselves and swerves right back to talking about Parker.
And she goes on for a while about how she hopes Parker was just messing with her and that he actually likes her. It made her sound incredibly stupid, shallow, gullible, even compared to what we've seen of her before.
And Willow basically tells her all of these things, but she doesn't want to listen and just keeps talking about it until the end of the episode. Thanks for watching.
We cut to Xander at work, showing that he is just as dumb as we always thought he was.
Buffy enters the pub, and who happens to be there but Parker?
Buffy is distracted and bumps into Riley,
the only other male character on the show.
She points out Parker, and Riley says he has a reputation for running through lots of girls. But Buffy doesn't pay attention to anything else he says, so Riley just leaves.
Xander is humiliated by a college douchebag who is acting very much like a college douchebag. Xander then walks over to Buffy, who is still moping about Parker, but before they can discuss it, he gets called away to do his job.
Buffy bumps into some other guy and spills his drink, and he turns out to be friends with the douchebag. And then a bunch of other douchebags come over.
And tell her she should, quote, not be sad and alone and covered with men. Can we be those men? End quote.
It was very rapey. But when Buffy sees Parker leaving with another girl, she decides to go along with it.
And accepts a douche beer.
She's threatening to supplant Xander as my least favorite character.
It's a good thing the show isn't centered around her.
Willow and Oz are hanging out at the Bronze
when Oz is captivated by the singer of the band on stage, much to Willow's confusion.
It turns out to be that girl from a few episodes ago, and Oz says her name is Veruca, and that he knows the drummer of the band.
I never thought I would hear the name Veruca outside of Willy Wonka.
Willow being upset, I thought was a little bit weird because it could just be that Oz is really into the music, especially given that he's a musician, he knows somebody in this band, and this band is easily the best since Chibo Mato to perform at the Bronze.
I usually tune out most of the music at the Bronze whenever anyone's playing.
Yeah, that's valid.
No one's going to be as good as Mouth Keys. Back at the pub, Buffy's chugging beer and listening to the douches talking like douches, and I wanted to punch all of them.
One of them is played by Cal Penn, and I looked up the list of movies that he's been in, and the only one that I've seen is Superman Returns, and I don't even remember him being in that, so I don't know how I know who that is.
He's in a lot of stuff.
But stuff that I don't watch.
Yeah, right. You are a huge Harold and Kumar fan. I know you have all the Criterion collections of those movies.
The next day, Willow goes to her in Buffy's dorm and complains about Oz.
But Buffy is hungover, and all she can talk about is beer.
She makes it sound like she banged all four of those dudes before finally clarifying that they just drank beer. It was a little bit weird.
They head to Professor Walsh's class, and during the lecture, Buffy grabs a sandwich out of another girl's hand and just starts chomping away. And the other girl seems pretty okay with it.
And somehow, Professor Walsh doesn't notice, even though she noticed when Buffy put her hand up a few seconds earlier.
And this room is not that big.
The episode suddenly turns into Frankenstein when we see that some kind of concoction is being added to beer.
We then cut back to the pub, where the douches and Buffy are all drinking and being stupid.
And they keep acting increasingly childish.
Xander is concerned, but does not do anything, because that would take a spine.
Oz visits Willow and mentions that Veruca's band is performing again that night, which upsets Willow, and she says she'll skip it. before awkwardly leaving.
Back in the pub, Xander starts the jukebox, and Buffy runs over acting like a moron, and Xander ends up kicking her out.
Willow finds Parker at some bar and confronts him
about how he treated Buffy.
And the whole conversation was really undercut by the way Willow kept using cutesy little sayings and shit. It was weird and stupid.
Buffy's really hurting right now. In fact, she's in need of a big mental tidy. You men and your madness. And you act like it's nothing more than a bag of some kind of snack food.
Parker says that most relationships
are just two people passing through life, enriching or aggravating each other's lives briefly.
And tells Willow not to read so much into stuff because he doesn't. And then he tells Willow she's a good friend. Starts to move in.
Back at Xander's bar, Buffy's new friends are now seemingly incapable of speech, and Xander takes advantage of their state to try to take all their money, because he's a great guy.
He tells them it's time to leave, when one of them bursts out of the bathroom, having reverted to a caveman.
And he knocks out Xander. When Xander wakes up, the other guys can suddenly talk again, but then they suddenly start cavemaning out too.
But he manages to scare them away with his lighter. So even these cavemen know that smoking is a bad idea.
Xander tells his boss what happened, and his boss reveals that he magicked up the beer as a way of punishing the kids for basically being annoying douchebags, which he learned how to do from his warlock brother-in-law, and he says it'll wear off in about a day.
Xander has recruited Giles to go get Buffy, who has also started turning into a caveman. Well, cave woman.
Meanwhile, Parker is still putting the moves on Willow, but she reveals that she's not being won over by it.
Which was good. I was afraid she would not do that.
Yeah. She tells him that all men want is sex, and that they haven't changed since the dawn of time.
And at that moment, the actual cavemen bust in and knock them both out.
Giles and Xander observe Buffy playing with her chair, then trying to turn on the TV, and then she starts coming on to Xander. And when he mentions to Giles that the magic beer should wear off, Buffy hears beer and says she wants some.
And runs out. The cavemen have started a fire, which gets out of control, and they are all trapped.
Xander finds Buffy outside, and they see the smoke, and for some reason, Buffy gets there by herself, way before Xander.
She busts in and finds Willow, and uses her Slayer skills to open a high window.
And we randomly cut to Giles asking around for Buffy, and it was a very out-of-place joke.
She walks with a sort of sideways limp.
Buffy gets all the cavemen and Willow out, and they all keep coughing, but they stay right next to the smoking window.
Parker's the only one left.
And he finally wakes up, because this is when the script said it should happen.
Buffy sees him, and he starts to freak out, and she just knocks him out with a big branch before dragging him out.
Afterward, firemen put out the fire, and we see that Xander has put the cavemen in a random van, which I thought was kind of funny.
Parker approaches Buffy and apologizes for the way he treated her, thanks her, and asks her forgiveness.
While exaggeratedly sappy music plays.
I'm sorry for how I treated you before. It was wrong of me, and...
It's pretty much her daydream from the beginning, but she knocks him out again.
The end. For real this time. Beer bad. Overall?
This was a pretty throwaway episode. None of it really mattered. The reveal was pretty dumb. And we again focused way too much on Buffy moping about Parker. I have been done with this Parker shit ever since it started. And hearing his justification to bang as many people as possible made me even more tired of it. And I hope Buffy clubbing him out is going to be the end of it. But I've been hoping that since he showed up, so it's probably not. Is the theme of this season having people just bump into a main character randomly in one episode to only actually show up and interact at a later episode? Because that's dumb. And a very lame way to create new plots. And even in this one, the Veruca thing was brought up, but then thrown away. There is a way to gradually introduce new storylines, and these writers are not good at it. It was weird that nobody besides Buffy and Xander noticed an entire building was on fire, either on or right next to a college campus. Apparently some people think this is one of the worst episodes of the show, period, so I guess they haven't watched any of the episodes that we've watched. Because a good chunk of those are a lot worse than this one, even though this one was stupid. Although, they did capture how douchey some college people can be. I'll give them that. But I thought this episode was pretty stupid. I gave it a D.
I also gave it a D, and I agree that there have been a lot of worse episodes than this. but it was pretty freaking stupid. So the entire reason this episode was made was because there was an organization that was giving money to TV shows that would do episodes focusing on drug problems, basically, kind of anti-drug messages. That's why they wrote this episode, and they didn't end up getting money for it because that organization said that it didn't make any sense and had nothing to do with real-world drug problems, which is true, and also really funny. And the fact that that's the entire reason why the episode was made really shows you how throwaway it is. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else. I mean, you've got the Parker stuff, but that's about it. The episode was dumb, but again, not as bad as some other episodes we've had. I mean, Angel wasn't in it at all. Yeah, it was pretty forgettable, pretty stupid. It made me hate Buffy and Willow more than I did before.
Why Willow?
The way she was talking to Parker, she just came off as a huge idiot. If you go to confront somebody that you're angry at, you don't start making cutesy little remarks and joking with them about things. It doesn't make any sense. It just makes her look like an idiot.
My plan is to forget about this episode by just drinking myself into a stupor, so I'll see you later.